She thought it was just a cup of coffee. But what happened next shocked everyone. The coffee shop was loud in the quietest way possible, filled with the soft hum of machines, clinking cups, and tired people trying to wake themselves up for another ordinary day, when one small, almost invisible act changed everything. She didn't know his name, his story, or even why he looked so broken that morning. All she knew was that something in her heart refused to let her walk away. One swipe of her card, one warm cup of coffee paid for a stranger, and a chain of events began that no one inside that cafe would ever forget. Before the story goes any further, if you believe that kindness still matters in this world, that small actions can create big miracles, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more real, heart-touching stories that remind us we are not alone. She had almost not gone into that cafe at all. Her name was Emma, and life had been heavier than usual lately. She was 32, living in a small apartment that felt emptier every night since her mother passed away 6 months earlier. Bills stacked up on the kitchen counter. Her job at a design firm was hanging by a thread after recent layoffs, and sleep had become something she remembered more than experienced. That morning, rain streaked the city streets, matching the way her thoughts kept running in circles. She only wanted coffee to keep herself standing through the day. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and damp coats. Emma stood in line, scrolling through her phone without really seeing anything, when she noticed him ahead of her. He stood slightly hunched, wearing a thin jacket that looked too light for the cold outside. His shoes were worn, his hair uncombed, and his hands shook as he reached into his pocket. When the cashier told him the price, his shoulders stiffened. He counted coins slowly, carefully, as if each one mattered more than it should. Then he stopped, stared down at his palm, and quietly stepped aside, pretending to check his phone while the line moved forward. Emma felt that familiar tightening in her chest, the one she'd been feeling ever since grief had made her overly sensitive to other people's pain. She tried to ignore it. She told herself she couldn't save everyone, that she had her own problems, her own fears about the future. But as she placed her order, she heard the cashier call out the man's simple request again, now canceled. Without thinking, before doubt could talk her out of it, Emma said she'd pay for his coffee too. It was such a small thing, barely the cost of a sandwich. The cashier smiled, surprised, and added it to her bill. Emma moved aside, heart beating faster than it should have, suddenly aware of how awkward kindness can feel when it's unexpected. She didn't look at the man. She didn't want thanks, didn't want attention. She just waited for her cup, hoping the moment would pass quietly. But moments like that rarely do. The man stood a few feet away, holding the warm cup, like it might disappear if he loosened his grip. His eyes were fixed on the steam rising from the lid, and something about the way he stared made Emma glance over despite herself. His face crumpled, not dramatically, not loudly, but in a way that spoke of someone who had been holding things in for far too long. He took a shaky breath, then another, and wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve as if embarrassed by his own reaction. Emma looked away again, suddenly unsure if she'd done the right thing. Sometimes kindness can open doors people have tried hard to keep closed. She took her coffee and headed for the door, ready to step back into the rain and into her own problems, when she heard footsteps behind her. Not fast, not demanding, just hesitant. She turned, and there he was, standing a few feet away, holding his cup with both hands like an anchor. His eyes met hers, and in them was something that made her pause. It wasn't just gratitude. It was relief, shock, and a deep, aching sadness mixed together. He nodded once, slowly, as if words were too heavy to carry, then sat down at the nearest table without asking anything more of her. Emma hesitated, then surprised herself by sitting at the table across from him. She told herself she'd only stay a minute. That minute stretched. The man's name was Daniel. He didn't speak much at first, just stared into his coffee as if it were telling him secrets. When he finally began to write on a napkin with the pen from his pocket, Emma realized he wasn't comfortable talking about himself. He explained, in uneven handwriting, that he had once been a teacher. Literature. He loved stories, loved helping students find meaning in words when their own lives felt confusing. Then his wife got sick. Cancer moved fast and without mercy. Medical bills came, then time off work, Then grief that swallowed his focus whole. One mistake turned into many. He lost his job. Then his apartment. Friends faded away, not out of cruelty, but discomfort. It had been 2 years since he last felt like himself. Emma read every word, her own coffee growing cold. She felt something shift inside her, something fragile but alive. She told him softly, about her mother, about how quiet her apartment felt now, about how she sometimes sat in her car after work because going inside felt too final. They didn't fix each other. They didn't offer solutions. They simply shared the weight, and somehow that made it lighter. Over the next few weeks, they ran into each other again and again, always at that same cafe, usually on rainy mornings. Emma learned Daniel was staying at a temporary shelter and spent his days at the public library, reading and writing when he could. She brought him books sometimes, ones her mother had loved. He returned them with notes tucked inside, passages underlined, thoughts scribbled in the margins that made. Emma saw familiar stories in new ways. Life didn't magically improve overnight. Emma still faced uncertainty at work, still woke up with anxiety sitting heavy on her chest. Daniel still struggled, still fought the quiet shame that comes with starting over later than planned. But something was different now. They were no longer invisible to each other. One afternoon, Emma came into the cafe exhausted, her eyes red from crying. She had just been told her position was being cut. Daniel noticed immediately. He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was a short essay he'd written about resilience, about how endings are often misunderstood as failures when they are really transitions. Emma read it twice, then once more, tears blurring the words. For the first time since losing her mother, she felt seen not as someone broken, but as someone still becoming. Weeks turned into months. Emma found freelance work, then a new job that valued her creativity. She helped Daniel update his resume, connected him with a nonprofit that worked with displaced educators. The day he got called in for an interview, he held that same coffee cup with shaking hands, but this time his smile reached his eyes. The morning Daniel came into the cafe wearing a clean-pressed shirt and holding a folder, Emma knew before he wrote anything. He had been hired, part-time at first, teaching adult literacy classes. When he finished his coffee, he stood up straighter than she'd ever seen him, nodded once, and placed a book on the table for her. Inside the cover, he'd written that one small kindness had reminded him he still mattered, and that reminder had saved his life. Just before this story ends, take a moment to comment below and tell us, have you ever experienced or witnessed a small act of kindness that changed everything? On the anniversary of the day Emma paid for that first coffee, the cafe was just as noisy, just as ordinary. No one else knew what had begun there. Emma sat by the window, watching the rain when Daniel walked in and ordered 2 coffees, paying without hesitation. He placed one in front of her and sat down, the warmth between them comfortable now, familiar. If this story touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that kindness can ripple further than we ever imagine, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who might be standing in line right now, feeling invisible, waiting for a small moment to remind them they are not alone.